Thanks to Great Toothpaste for sponsoring a portion of this video.
Wouldn't it be great if there were a way to organize all of those apps?
Take your finger, slide it up, and it pulls up the myriad of...
The app library.
Or if I hold down, I get a little haptic feedback, and I can add
widgets. And you can see they now come in a variety of sizes. When I tap it, the text just jumps right out.
Called Google Lens. So it's an old story, right? Every year, Apple comes out with a new iPhone, and it's got new software on it, and it instantly gets compared to every other phone on the market. And by that I mean every other Android phone on the market. I certainly do it. And you get the same sort of tropes every year. Apple stole this, Apple stole that. And the very well may be true, but sort of year after year as Apple adds new features, it seems as if they are catching up. So as somebody who generally carries an iPhone around with them throughout the entire year, there's a lot of things the iPhone does well, but as somebody who also is using pretty much every Android phone coming out, there's a lot of things that I wish that phone had. So, and with the iPhone 13 Pro, I think the line between iPhone and Android is now closer than ever, at least in theory. And I'm gonna kind of pump the brakes on this a little bit. While Apple has gotten closer, they still have a ways to go to get to feature and tech parity with what Android has to offer. And like I said in previous videos, you know Apple's gonna Apple, and they are going to take their time. So take this video as kind of a roadmap for what we'll see for iPhone 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, all the way up to iPhone 20 as these new features will slowly get added. So look, I am definitely not here to create another battle between Apple and Android manufacturers. I've done many videos where that is my intention. This one is just to talk about the features. But Apple seems to be making gains with their Pro model iPhones. And yet, this year's iPhone 13 Pro didn't get a huge redesign. It doesn't fold. It's missing some sort of big features that the rumors said, allegedly, were pretty solid. Things you could do with your thumb on the screen, for example. But the iPhone 13 Pro did add a ton of new features that come, quite frankly, directly from Android phones. And Apple, like I said, is going to Apple, and most of these features have existed for years on other devices. But now that Apple has them, are they any good? So the biggest addition for me, and I have been on this hill for years since I first saw high refresh display, is ProMotion. The first Android phone with this feature was actually the Razr phone all the way back in 2017. So obviously that phone didn't sell nearly as well as an iPhone, but since that time, almost every other Android phone has had some sort of high refresh rate screen. So now that it's here, the only thing I can really say is, finally. The variable refresh rate that can dynamically clock all the way down to 10 hertz means battery life has not taken a huge hit like we have seen on some other Android phones, but honestly, there's no compromise with how you use this. It just looks good. You don't have to scale resolution down to get the high refresh rate. Apple's taking a lot of that stuff out for you, and that's kind of the Apple's gonna Apple approach, right? Samsung gives you crazy high resolution screens, and you can choose the resolution and the refresh rate variability depending on what battery life you want. Apple is going to tell you what you want and not give you any choices. And oftentimes what they select is generally the best option for most people. So 120 hertz was, I think, kind of the more obvious features to add. The feature that got the most attention, at least in the keynote, is cinematic mode. So by now you probably know what it is. We've demonstrated it a bunch of times, but it's a cool way to rack focus and create artificial blur in video. Again, it's like portrait mode for video. While cinematic mode is very clearly a first-gen feature, it is executed better than the competition that's had it for a couple years. The ability to adjust the blur after the fact can make some really impressive looking shots and give you, the person creating the video, more option. And the rack focus feature surprisingly works very well. But speaking of the camera stuff, the iPhone 13 Pro now has a macro camera. And I would even argue the macro camera is more fun and useful than even the zoom. But because it's using the ultra wide, it's got a 12 megapixel sensor. It's relatively sharp and it leads to some amazing photos. I mean, look at this photo. This is a shot that our own editor, JD Prevost, shot of his own eye. This is straight out of the phone, no editing. So what these features really show, again, isn't Apple's ability to come up with the most innovative new feature ideas, but rather when Apple adds new features, they'll wait and make sure they get it almost perfect. So no matter how you feel about the iPhone and new features, chances are you probably already have a Mac laptop, or you're waiting for the M1X or M2, whatever they call it, to drop. Those computers are absolutely amazing, but one of the biggest knocks of computers themselves isn't actually the computer. It's one of the accessories that Apple ships, their power brick. But what has really been disappointing about it is missing that third prong. And maybe you didn't even notice it, but that third prong is really important for grounding. It can protect your computer from microcurrents, from power surges, even electrosmog. And it's nice to have for peace of mind, so if you ever get a huge surge, your computer will not be fried. Enter Grey Ducky from the folks at Grey Toothpaste. It is not used for your teeth. It is essentially a replacement for the part that plugs into the power brick, and it gives you that third prong for grounding if you want it, but also it folds back totally flat, and I think addressing and fixing one of the biggest problems with the MacBook accessories. And these will work with any of the M1 computers, the Intel computers. It'll work with pretty much any Mac laptop that you have. I mean, so these are laptops, right? They're meant to be carried with you. Maybe you're taking them to school, friend's house, coffee shops. You don't know necessarily what you are plugging into, what their electrical system is. So Grey Ducky, at least for me, gave me that peace of mind, just a little extra barrier to protect my very expensive machine. So if you want to check them out or back them on Kickstarter, we'll link to them down below. There are a ton of features that your favorite Android phones have the iPhone does not have. Even some features that we're expecting this year, according to rumors, that didn't end up coming. So the biggest one for me, and this is my new hill I'm gonna climb now that we have Promotion Display, in-screen fingerprint reader in addition to Face ID, or at the very least, put it on the power button. You've got it on iPads, it seems set and ready to go. Why it's not on the iPhone is a hard one to understand. So another really easy feature to add that I know we're never gonna see, but I still wanna say it, is USB Type-C. I don't think this would be complicated for Apple to do. They're still making a boku bucks from licensing Lightning, so whatever, it's not gonna happen. It'd be nice to have happen. I think we'll see the port go away before we finally do get USB Type-C, but one cable for everything, I think would be awesome. So camera zoom on the iPhone 13 Pro, I think unexpectedly got bumped to 3x, which I know was not record setting. It was a nice surprise though, but it doesn't feel like Apple tried too hard with this. The camera is actually a bit worse than last year's with the aperture. It just adds a bit more zoom. So with the Pro phone, the zoom camera is the main difference from the regular 13. And I'd like Apple to take that a step further and give us something more. Give us that periscope camera with a 10x zoom. Give us a space zoom competition. It'd be one thing if Apple didn't care about the zoom camera, but they're clearly working on it and they care about it. It's been there for years. So I'd like them to go all the way and at least come close to what Samsung and others are doing. And speaking of things that Apple can do to sort of catch up to Android, I mean, Samsung's pushing foldables insanely hard, and they are clearly becoming more mainstream. The big issues with them are getting addressed. Durability, IP ranking, and now they're becoming lower and lower cost. It's not a matter of if Apple's gonna get into foldables, but a matter of when. But right now, Apple's just selling different size rectangles. If there are people out there that want different shapes and form factors, your only option is on the Android side. So hardware is one thing, but there's a bunch of software stuff that Apple needs to catch up on. I mean, Siri, that should just
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
So I think it's also time that Apple takes the next step and lets users customize their phones just like a little bit more. So in the last few years, they've done way more than I think any of us expected, but there's obviously a ton more that can be done. It would be nice if they would let us natively install themes or icon packs, but let's be real, that probably won't happen anytime soon. You're gonna have to go through shortcuts and jump through like 10 hoops to change your icons. I'm a Mac user, I love big phones, but the more I use big phones, the more I realize the big phone should get something extra, like split screen, for example. Take advantage of that real estate, multi-window. You could do so much more instead of just like making things just like a little bit bigger. In my mind, there are a few options. The one that I think many tech fans would love to see is Apple experiment a little bit more. Take more chances on different features. And this is very much the Samsung approach, and while sort of every feature they announce doesn't always work, it's led to the idea that Samsung phones have the best tech inside, the most features of any phone out there. Another direction Apple could go in is kind of the Google route. Instead of one major update to the software every year, you can get app by apps updated in larger sort of updates throughout the year. So for instance, if the new home screen options are ready in July, just release it then. Or if the new Photos app, for example, is ready in December, push it out then. Lately, Apple started to announce new products and features and then delay them for the future. And that tends to lead to, I think, general disappointment, right? So these are just some of the stuff that comes to mind, but there are a ton of others that I'm sure I'm forgetting about. What it comes down to is there are features that Apple could implement, and they could implement very well. I just kind of want to see them do it.